Hey guys, welcome back to Insomniac's Dream. Today's video is just my process of how I created my grayscale makeup from Game of Thrones. Originally in my mind was to try and do this with 3rd degree silicone, but then I also wanted to maybe just check to see how other people had done it in the past, and I did discover that Lex of Made You Look has an amazing tutorial already on how to do grayscale, so please, I'm highly recommending you check that out as well. It's a fantastic video, as are all of Lex's videos. They're amazing. So this is just my process. Some of it's similar, but I'm giving all credit and love and original did it firstness to Lex because her look is amazing. So if you want to see how to do it, then just keep watching. First things first is some much needed Alice time, and then I moved on to mixing the parts A and B of 3rd degree silicone together. Once you mix them together, you get about 5 minutes until it starts hardening on you. And silicone hardens into kind of a jelly-like texture, so it molds and moves with your face a lot easier. But you can see I applied it down with a spatula, laying it out relatively thick near the center, and then trying to blend it as flat as possible at the edges. And then once I had that, I used the same spatula to carve into the silicone and create these shapes for the grayscale. The cheek one I made a little bit deeper by using a thicker amount of silicone directed towards the center. And then for the forehead, I wanted to be a little bit more subtle, so I used a smaller amount, as well as made sure that it was thinner and flatter to the head. That way when you carve into it, you're getting more of a subtle raise to the skin. And then the opposite to this is what we'll eventually do on the chest, which is apply very thick coats to the center to create a really raised section to make much deeper grayscale. Even though on the chest I wanted to make bigger sections, you still want to actually work in smaller amounts because the silicone will dry in 5 minutes whether you like it to or not. Giving yourself smaller sections to work in allows you to detail those areas a lot more and not have to worry about getting the grayscale pattern down absolutely everywhere and then having it harden and solidify before you even get to it. And something to keep in note that I did with all of the sections, even if I was going to layer them, is try to blend them out as much as you can towards the edges, both by using the spatula to flatten the silicone towards the edge. That way the pattern that you're building up will carry all the way out until it reaches your skin and becomes easier to blend later on with paints. And though I know it's hard to see exactly what's getting carved when it's see-through, essentially I'm just looking at pictures of grayscale or just stonework in general and trying to create that almost cracky feel that you get from the outlines of stones, but they also have a little bit of softness to their corners because they are a little bit more rounded through weathering. That's kind of what grayscale seems to be inspired by. So just looking at different pictures, you can get an idea of where you need to create all of the line work. And then for starting to fill in amongst all of the cracks that we have built, I am using an alcohol activated paint. This is from Skin Illustrator. And I'm going in mainly with the reds right now and using a fine detail brush as well as a stipple sponge and a little bit of alcohol to apply this. If you apply a little bit too much, you can actually use alcohol on a clean brush and actually wipe it away. So it's a lot more forgiving than that if you go overboard, you usually can backtrack fairly nicely. And then just as a comparison, you can see on the cheek I went a lot more in depth with the red, mainly because I wanted this one to appear deeper and a little bit more irritated and infected, whereas the one on the forehead was a softer one. And then to add the gray, I actually don't have a gray alcohol activated paint, so I used a tip I've learned from Jordan Hans, and I used alcohol to actually activate a water activated face paint. This one's from Mehron, and so I used their gray on a stipple sponge as well as a brush and started applying that to the areas that I wanted to be the grayscale. This method was really useful and very fun to try out. I do notice that you're able to use a water-activated face paint a little bit more like a watercolor, so you get more translucency than you normally would, but you don't get quite as much as you would get from an actual alcohol-activated paint. So it kind of lets you end up in the middle, but you still get to use it in a much more soft, buildable way, which is definitely worth trying if you haven't done so yet. For the eye makeup and the rest of the face, I kept it super simple and soft. I just used a few neutral brown colors on the eyes. I pulled them inwards from the outer corner of my eye towards the front portion of my eyebrow. This is a nice shape to just make your eyes look a little bit bigger and bring some light to the center. And then I added a wing liner and some mascara, as well as a pair of false lashes, because why not? You, of course, could also go the opposite way and make your eyes look real infected, sad, and grungy, which I've done in tutorials like my Joker makeup before, so whichever way you want to go with that. Then, of course, for the chest grayscaling, it's basically the exact same steps, just on a larger scale. Ha, get it? Sorry. I wanted the red to be far more widespread, so I wasn't so worried about going overboard here, mainly because I wanted to reference more the type of Jorah scale removal level, so very, very infected and very uncomfortable looking. So I did a lot of the red, stippled it around the edges, carried it out with some alcohol, and then made sure to really deepen all the center cracks. I also wanted this to look a lot deeper, so not only did I do deeper reds towards the center, I also maybe used a little bit of black here and there just to make it look like it's far more raised. And then I repeated the same steps with the stipple sponge and the aqua color paint for the gray areas. I just slowly built this up. You can also use different colors of gray, add some black or white in there randomly because stones on their own have a lot of different little specklings of color. So adding it here kind of makes sense for the idea of the infection. And then when the gray color is laid down, it's actually easier to go back and just detail certain areas that you want to be more detailed and more recessed. As well as once I had all of that down in the cracks, I went ahead and added some fake blood because I wanted it to look real unpleasant and unhappy looking. And also be fun for adding the effect later on of maybe adding like pus and dried blood and all that grossness. Last step for the makeup was voted by chat to throw on some gray lips. So this is my Smashbox lipstick. It's just a matte gray. And then a little bit of a gore SFX warning for you guys. Something else is really fun to add in is Dermaflage has these silicone injectors. So I used some pus and blood and kind of squished it in underneath the silicone piece. And that way you can have a really gross removal process that looks nasty, but also like super fun. So yeah, that was the process for creating the grayscale makeup. I just kind of want to show different stages of it as like I see it. It does change a lot in the show. So I mean, some of these are not the very subtle, just line work versions that exist on like Jorah's arm when he first gets it and that are on Shireen's face. So there's tons of different like variations throughout the show. I did, for at least for the chest, I was definitely looking at Jorah's really gross, well advanced type because that was just awesome. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching. I of course will see you next video. So until then, bye guys. Now we all too late to fall. Yeah, anyone coming, I'ma lift them all. Never look down when it's risk involved. I got guts, got a lot, I gotta wish it all. Ain't got no feelings, we just floating. Yeah, I'm that grain of sand that made it out the ocean. A couple milli now, I'm causing a commotion. I've been coasting, hear my name around the world like an explosion.